So you're probably wondering, why me? Yes, and I don't need that. In fact, my neighbor, I figure I'm amongst friends, right? My neighbor said to me this morning, Mike, he goes, you could carry on a conversation with a dead bird. So you're much better than that. I'm Michael Weller, and I'm Kathy Engelhardt, our minister here at Unity of Garden Park's husband. And she had eye surgery this week. And so she asked me if I would help her out by taking the message today. And I just want to say that I'm honored. I'm honored to be able to share with you today about my journey this summer on a sailboat. So a little bit about me. Kathy says to me that Unity honors
all paths to God.
Oh, so speaking of that, I will tell you a little bit about my path to God. I actually started out as my earliest recollection, a Presbyterian, became a Methodist, Lutheran, no name on brand Christian, back to being a Presbyterian again. And so I was actually the music director for a Presbyterian church for 21 years when Kathy and I met. And many of you didn't even know of me at that time, thought I was a figment of her imagination. And so then I became Mr. Engelhardt for a while, you know. But my path has been an interesting path, in that I gained something, the truth of our divine, as we call it here, our God, from all of those places. I can honestly say that, the differences between them are minimal, and that we all are just having a different path towards God. So Kathy says to me, something about Unity that she wanted to ask me something about, that maybe I should start this talk with.
What has Unity done to change your life?
And so I have to say that I'll go back a little bit in my history, and that is that I noticed about, when I think about my history in the church, that the Presbyterian, Lutheran, Methodist churches, they speak of a God that's on the outside. They have hymns and hymn books, and we sing about a God that's out there and sing to a God. And so that's different. That's different. It was not wrong. It's just different. And then I went to a contemporary Christian church, and they spoke about having a personal relationship with God. And that was different. It was a new way of looking at God. And then I come to Unity. And Unity talks about a God that is within, omnipresent. And it reminds me of a book that I read in my preparation for Unity. It's called The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. He was a monk in the 1600s, and they wrote down his thoughts. And the thing that struck me about that book is that Brother Lawrence talked about having a conversation with God all the time. So you go back to the Presbyterians, they had intercessory prayer. The preacher would preach for you, or an elder, and then I could have this personal relationship with God. And so now I can talk to God one-on-one was with the contemporary church. And then I get Brother Lawrence freeing me up to just have a conversation all of the time. And that was a life-changing moment. And so it prepared me, because that's how we look at Unity. Unity is God within. And that's a whole beautiful new perspective for me. So I started a journey this summer, and I bought a sailboat. And I've been sailing for 10 years. And I go to a place called the North Channel, and it's on a smaller boat, and not quite as nice as my new one, or as safe. So my new boat, Moonshadow. I bought Moonshadow in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. And it's kind of interesting, because that's where I was born. And I was born in Detroit, and my grandmother and my mother grew up on a boulevard that went to Lake St. Clair. And it was only a mile from the place that I bought the boat. So it was like a homecoming. Moonshadow and I got to know each other on that lake, the lake that I went to as a child and made little sailboats out of 2x4s in my grandfather's basement. And it's different. It was a different boat to me. And I had to it was not prepared for what I was going to ask of it. I had to prepare it for a long journey. And my journey started in Lake St. Clair, but I had to go up what was called the St. Clair River. And I want you to think about something. We've got Lake Superior, big lake. You may not know the Great Lakes, and Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. There's a flow to them. They're not a dead body of water like what's said in the Bible. The Sea of Galilee has a flow to it. It has water coming in and water coming out. It is full of fish and life, whereas the Dead Sea takes water in but doesn't allow any out. And so it just evaporates and gets saltier and saltier and saltier, and it has no life in it. That's why they call it the Dead Sea. Well, the Great Lakes are full of life, full of fish. There's fishermen. It's a wonderful place to be. And so, but it flows, and it all flows into the St. Clair River. And that's where I started my journey with Moonshadow. And so you don't sail up the St. Clair River. And it's got a really strong current. Thinking about all those tributaries, and those Great Lakes are coming into the St. Clair River. So I had to have my trusty Yanmar, a 2-cylinder diesel motor. That is the heart of Moonshadow. I have to tell you, she has a strong heart. And we went up the St. Clair River. And I have to tell you, when you start a journey on the Great Lakes, this is an important tool. All right. We use technology, and we're talking about a journey here. I'm going to tell you, it ended up being over 1,000 nautical miles on Moonshadow. This is a very important tool. On this tool, I have things like a wind finder, and it tells me the wind and what size the waves are going to be. It has what the weather is going to be, and whether it's got radar, so I can tell where the storms are. So I'm prepared. I've got my iPhone, and I'm ready to go on my journey. So I choose a time. It's like, oh, I got a window where there's nice weather. Okay, good. I'm going to take off, and I'm going to go up the St. Clair River, and up I go. And the other thing about this is that Kathy talked about Mr. Rogers. Do you remember what she says about Mr. Rogers?
Always look for the helpers.
And I decided before I went on this journey that I'd join a group on Facebook called Sail the Great Lakes. And it's a bunch of sailors that sail the Great Lakes. And I asked them, what's it going to be like to go up Lake Huron? I've never been up Lake Huron. I've done Lake Michigan, and I've done the northern part, but I've never gone up all the way up Lake Huron. And so they told me about, you got about 40 to 50 nautical miles between stops, places of refuge, marinas and or anchorages. And there's not many anchorages. So I knew that I'd have to make about 40 to 50 miles a day. That doesn't seem like much, except for that a sailboat only goes about 5 nautical miles an hour. So do the math. That's an 8 or 10 hour day between that. I'm thinking good weather, because everybody tells me, oh, Mike, or they're going, Mike's going on a journey. Oh, on the water. Oh, what about storms? What about, it's so dangerous. I had my iPhone. And so I checked, and I had a window, and I took off. But that Sail the Great Lakes, I get a message. I want to share this with you because it kind of gives me goosebumps to tell you. I get a message from somebody, not only all the other ones, but I used to own your boat. It wasn't the guy that I bought it from. It wasn't the guy he bought it from or the guy before him. He was the second owner. Now, talk about, if we didn't have this technology today, I couldn't make that connection. He was the second owner. He bought it from the original owner who won the lottery, bought the boat, and never sailed it. He just went out and hung out on it, right? But that second owner owned the boat 25 years. You talk about a relationship with something, right? So what are we talking about here? Something. It's a boat, but is it just a boat? I'm here to tell you that when you're on a boat, you have a relationship. And one that's, 37 years old, she's an old girl. And you got to take care of her, and you can't expect too much, but she's going to take care of you. And Micheal took care of me. I'm here to tell you about that. And so I headed up, and the first place where that boat was stationed, or where the home port was Sanilac, Michigan, and that's where I was heading when I got that message from the guy. And I'm telling you, Micheal kicked in an extra gear when I was getting close to Sanilac. She was like, I'm coming home. I didn't even know. So everything's going along great. I made it to the St. Clair River. I did what they told me to do. Stay to the side. Don't get in the current. And I'm starting to head, and I'm there, and I'm excited because I've got to make it a certain amount of distance every day, because I got to not only make the 40 to 50 miles, but Kathy's on the other side. I've got to meet her again eventually. And I decide, my phone says to me, small craft warning, the storms are coming. And I say, but they're not going to be till 2:00. I can make it to a spot called Harbor Beach. And so I take off for it. And when I get close to Harbor Beach, I'm thinking, I pulled it off. The storms are coming, but I'm going to get here. I'm going to get into port. And I go in, and they're dredging. Dredging means that they're digging it out deeper. My boat won't get into the port, and the storm's coming upon me. So what do? You got to think on your feet. So I get in behind a seawall because the waves are starting to kick up. They're at least 4-footers by that time. And I drop my anchor. First time, I knew it was there, and I made preparations. I'd gotten in, and I tidied up the anchor locker and stuff. And an anchor is my first thing I want to tell you about. An anchor has like 2 flutes. Mine's a Danforth, and it digs into the soil at the bottom of the lake if you put it in the right place. Because if you put an anchor on rock, it's just going to bounce across the bottom, and it's not going to hold you. Another place that's not good for an anchor is if you set it down and you put it in weeds, it's just going to ball up the weeds, and off you go again. You've got to set an anchor in a good spot. And so my journey, and what I want to tell you about first, is the first thing you want to do is set your anchor in a solid foundation, the divine. Your anchor needs to be set into a solid divine location in life, because you can weather the storm. Now, an anchor not only has that part at the bottom that has to dig in and hold on for you, it has a chain, about a 30-foot chain. And the chain holds things down. And it's your connection to that anchor. But I think about a chain as being all the wisdom and all the stories and everything that you've learned in life are those links. They link together, and they connect you to that chain and to that divine presence and that all those things. So keep your chain, keep adding links to your chain as you go through life. A chain's really important. And that's not the end of it. Then there's what's called a road, R-O-D-E, not R-O-A-D. A road is a heavy line, heavy rope that attaches to that chain. And that rope, what I'd like to think about is that that's like your faith. The rope attaches to all the wisdom that you've gained that attaches to the divine. The road is your faith. And when you set your anchor, you have to be careful, because you can't set it at 100 feet. You got to get closer to the divine, closer to that space, probably about 10 feet of water below you. And you got to find that place with your iPhone. And so once you've set your anchor, you have to not have too much road. You got to keep your faith strong, tied to that anchor. You got me? You with me? This is the way I think about it, because if you get too far off, you'll pull the anchor out. All right? So you want to keep your faith strong and keep it close to the divine. So I weathered that storm. And here's what I want to tell you about weathering a storm. And it's not the only one I'm going to talk to you about today. That was my first storm. Number one, I'm here to talk about it. I set my anchor right, and it held. But the thing is, you have to not conjure up. I'm going to say this is one of the things I'd like you to take away. Conjure up worry. When we go through life, we set our anchor, we're good to go. Don't sit there and think, oh, but what else what's going to happen, And you start to conjure up worry when you're in the midst of a storm, right? So you got to calm yourself down. You got to get right. You got to trust in your anchor, trust in your foundation. And I'll tell you, this is what I did. I would sing this. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. I told Kathy about that, and that's why I'm pretty sure that's why you have that for your opening song now, because that song meant something to me. Oh, the other thing is, I don't want to leave off, but Kathy told me something about unity. That she says, well, what difference does it make in your life? And she told me about
prayer for protection.
And every morning on this journey, I would say, what is it? The light of God surrounds me.
us.
The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me. And the presence of God watches over me. And wherever I am, God is, and all is well. I assure you, every morning I said that prayer. And so that's how unity changed my life. It's a little bit about it, back to the journey. So I'm heading up, and I make it through that storm, and I'm in the new boat, a new boat to me. So I don't really know how it's going to handle. And Lake Huron is no slouchy place. In fact, it's very, very tough to sail in June. Believe it or not, June 1st, I had 4 layers on. I was the only boat out on the lake, and everybody else thought I was crazy. I even went into a marina where I was the only boat in the marina, the whole place to myself. And it was for a reason, because I got to the north side of Lake Huron, which is colder yet, and I started experiencing 4-foot waves. So 4-foot waves are 4 and 5 footers like this, and they're hitting me in my stern, the back of the boat. Now, there's a reason. I just want to give you a little bit of what it's like to understand what it's like to be on a boat. Those waves will lift the back of the boat up and drop it back down, and you see them roll over the side, right? And I was so happy that on this boat, I have what's called auto helm. Auto helm is kind of like old school AI, I think. The boat steers itself. Now, it's pretty raucous when you got waves doing this, and it's doing all its thing, but it did steer itself. And I have to say that is kind of like Carrie Underwood's song, Jesus, take the wheel, right? And so, because I found it to be better to be sitting up towards the front instead of the back where all this was going on, and the boat Micheal took care of me, which was amazing. So as I go across the top, I've got these waves, they're sending me all over, and they finally calmed down for a little bit, and I decided to make for Sheboygan, which is almost to Mackinac. If anybody knows where Mackinac is, where the big bridge, right? And I'm almost there. And this is a 10-hour day, by the way. 10 hours on a boat, waves doing this all day long. I'm wore out. And I see Sheboygan. And then it hits the storm. And the thing about a storm on Huron is that, storms come from the west. You don't see them until they're on you. So I see this storm coming. I see the rain. You can see rain, and you can see lightning and stuff. And I'm almost to Sheboygan. I see Sheboygan's right there. But there's a narrow channel, and there's talk about shipwrecks to either side. And I'm going, what do I do? All of a sudden, it gets so dark, the lights on the lighthouses come on in the middle of the day. These waves are still kicking behind me, but a wind comes from the other direction, blowing so hard, it blows the tops of the waves off and turns it into mist. Lightning flashes flashing everywhere. This is the truth, folks. This is what I'm out there experiencing. I go down below and I grab what I've got, safety gear, and I'm clipping on my safety gear because if a wave breaches the hull, it could take me off and I'm dead because cold water in Huron will kill you within 5 minutes. So I know I have to stay on the boat. Okay? Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. I assure you, I was singing that song. And I had said the prayer of protection. And I got through that storm, and I made it back, 10-hour day, tied up to the dock, and I crashed. The next day, I've got to go through the Straits of Mackinac. You know, they've got the Mackinac Bridge. If you haven't seen it, it is a wonderful, beautiful bridge, amazingly beautiful. And it makes me think, bridge over troubled waters, because all of Lake Superior, all of Lake Michigan flow through the Straits of Mackinac under that bridge. And a freighter was coming the other way. It was my second freighter because I'd seen one earlier too going through the Port Huron. In any case, it is a daunting place to take a boat through. If you drive over it, look down sometime, you'll see it is a troubled water area. So in any case, I make it through and I go on even more adventures. Kathy joins me, and then I go up to be with my friends in the North Channel. And it's a beautiful journey. But you're probably wondering, well, what about sailing, Mike? I mean, maybe you'd like to know a little bit about sailing. So sailing is, because you've heard about the motor, about the heart of Moon Shadow. Moon Shadow does have sails. But I'll be honest with you. You don't sail all the time. It's definitely not the Caribbean kind of sail that you see in that special, you know. It's more like Captain Ron, if you've seen Captain Ron. In any case, sails, the way sailing works, just a quick understanding of this, and I'm telling you that because there's an analogy I'd like to share with you. Sailing is wind, of course, and you're capturing that wind and using it with your sails. But you cannot, so I think about, and I truly do think about the wind as being the breath of God. Okay? Because you think about it, omnipresent God, the wind is everywhere, right? All and always different too. You cannot sail directly into wind. So think about that, folks. So you can't go against the breath of God. Yes, you can try, but you're not going to make much progress. Okay, you might have to try. Yes, you can turn on your trusty Yanmar, your diesel, and force your way through the wind and through the waves, because a friend of mine says, Mike, from Canada, who I met up there, you can't have wind without having waves on the big lakes. So you got to get used to both of them, right? So there's a process. So when the wind's coming right at you, so are the waves. They're coming right at you. So that's a hard way to go. The next point of sail is where you are about maybe 45 degrees off the wind. You're still going into the wind, but you're not going directly into it. And I have to tell you, that's called close hauled, and it's exciting. So think about it. If the breath of God is the wind, and if that's God's will, allow me that. It's his will. And you go off with God, you're kind of going, it's here, and you add God's will to your will, you can make some progress, and it's exciting. So in life, in our journey, when we add God's will to our will, even if it's just a little bit of God's will and a lot of ours, it's still exciting and we still make progress. The next point of sail, which is my favorite point of sail, is called the beam reach. And that's where you're still not quite 90 degrees to the wind. That is the fastest point of sail. And I made 7.2, which is good, faster than my boat was designed to go in beam reach. And it is exciting. So imagine God, you've got God's will giving you more power and your will together, and man, you can go in life. The next one is called the beam reach, where you're starting to let God have more control. And you have your will, and God's will's there, but it's more God's will, and it's not quite as exciting. But it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to let Jesus take the wheel. And the last point is from the one that everybody thinks sailing is where the wind's coming right from behind you. And that was Ron Wills at the end. He didn't have the strength to move forward without God's will. So when you're in that time, when you have that time where things are really tough and the storms just keep coming, let Jesus take the wheel. Let God take the wheel. Accept that wind from behind you. And that's my journey this summer. I hope that you got something out of that. In conclusion, use your devices in your journey. They're important, but they're not everything. They're not everything. They didn't stop the storms from coming, right? But use them. Use the information, but don't allow them to be your journey. Set your anchors in something solid, divine. Build your chains with wisdom that you gain from others. Have faith with a strong road. Choose your points of sail correctly. When your will is not strong, then maybe let God help you through, like Ron. Okay? And enjoy the journey.